All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're getting into something that might just change how you think about, well, not just your money, but like your whole life, you know? We're talking Paula Pant, that afford anything philosophy she's got going on.
Yeah.
Got her big Think interview pulled up, some articles too. Think of this deep dive as like the cheat sheet version to understanding how this whole approach can help you unlock, I don't know, some serious freedom and choices in life.
I think what's so interesting about her work is that it's not just like your typical here's how to budget stuff.
Right.
It's really more about like a mindset shift. It helps you align your money with what actually matters to you, like deep down.
Exactly. And she starts off with this like, bam, powerful idea. You can afford anything, but not everything.
Right.
It's all about making choices, trade-offs. She uses these examples, you know, like travel, incredible food, big house.
Yeah.
You can't have it all, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing, that principle, it applies to way more than just money.
Oh, for sure.
It's your time, your energy, where you're putting your focus, all those things, they're limited resources we have in life.
Absolutely.
So then the big question becomes, how do we make those choices, but in a way that actually leads to the kind of life we want?
And that is where I love how she brings in this tree analogy.
Yes.
It's like a framework, a blueprint almost, for living intentionally. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's such a good visual.
Yeah.
Like imagine this, okay? The roots of your tree, those are your values. What are those things that without them, life just doesn't feel right? The non-negotiables, you know?
The stuff that truly matters.
Exactly. And then growing out from those roots, you've got the trunk. This is your philosophy, your goals in life. It's like taking those deep values and saying, okay, what kind of life do I actually want to build?
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from that trunk, the branches start coming out. Those are like your strategies, the paths you're going to take to reach those goals. Do you want to start a business, travel the world, spend more time with family? Each of those needs a different path.
Right. Makes sense.
And finally, you got the leaves. Those are the tactics, the actual nitty-gritty actions, the tools you use.
Like, okay, I got to do this specific thing.
Yeah, budgeting apps, investments, side hustles, all that stuff. Tons of options.
There's
right?
so many.
But they're meaningless if they're not connected back to that solid foundation. The values, the goals, the strategies.
That strong trunk and those deep roots.
Exactly. It's super easy to get caught up in those leaves, but Paul is saying the real freedom comes from having that solid base.
Okay, so then how does this tree thinking play out in the real world?
Right.
That's where I think financial independence comes in.
Right.
And, you know, when a lot of people hear FI, they think, oh, retiring early.
Yeah.
But Paula, she challenges that whole idea. She's like, no, FI is about having choices based on what you want at any point in life.
It's about the freedom. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for her, a big part of that is having enough passive income to cover your basic bills. So not like being a millionaire, but having that cushion.
Right. Think about what that actually means. It's like a psychological game changer, you know? It's less fear, more options.
For sure. It's like removing that money anxiety, that fear that a lot of people live with, and replacing it with, I don't know, a sense of possibility.
Exactly. And she makes it clear this isn't just about like quitting your job and living on a beach. It's about options. Maybe you love your work, but you want to work less. Maybe you want to start a business or travel for a year. FI gives you that ability.
So it's not just about the money itself, it's about what the money allows you to do.
Exactly.
Okay, and then she gets real tactical. She's got this 3-step roadmap to actually achieve FI, and step 1 is grow the gap. This means either you're increasing your income or decreasing your spending. Ideally both.
Right. And the key here is that it's not just about like mindless frugality.
Right, like cutting out lattes.
It's about being intentional. She talks about analyzing your spending to see what actually makes you happy and what you're cool with cutting back on.
So it's personalized, like figuring out what works for you.
Totally. And she also emphasizes that the right approach, it depends on your situation.
Oh yeah.
For some folks, earning more is the way to go first. For others, it's really digging into those spending habits.
Makes sense.
And this is something that really hit me. She points out how many people get stuck in this scarcity mindset, like they'll never be able to reach financial freedom.
Yeah.
But her whole approach is about empowering people to find ways to increase that income or decrease those expenses, even if it's just tiny steps at a time.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
All right, that brings us to step 2. Invest the gap. And this isn't just like throw all your money in the stock market kind of thing.
No, definitely not.
What is it then?
It's about understanding all the different ways you can invest that money to make it grow, build that cushion. This could be paying off debt, that emergency fund, retirement accounts, or maybe getting into some other investing strategies.
So many options. She recommends aiming for at least a 20% savings rate, which I know that can sound scary to some people.
Yeah.
But she's not saying you have to do that from day one.
It's a
journey, right?
Exactly. Even starting with just a 1% increase each month and slowly making that a habit, that can add up huge EE over time.
It's the small, consistent actions that make the biggest difference.
Absolutely. And that's where the final step comes in. Repeat.
Keep going.
It's about making this an ongoing thing, constantly looking at your approach and adjusting as your life changes.
Which it always does, right? I mean, life throws curveballs, the economy goes up and down, surprise expenses pop up, our priorities shift. There's always something.
And that's where Paula's philosophy, I think, is so strong. She doesn't pretend that things are always going to be smooth sailing.
Right.
In fact, she kind of uses that volatility to strengthen her message,
Yeah. Like, remember when she tells that story about how her own fear is actually what pushed her towards financial independence in the first place. That moment when she realized she was living paycheck to paycheck, how vulnerable that felt.
Oh, yeah.
It's powerful, right? It's like a reminder that this isn't about being some financial genius.
Right.
It's about taking control and building a base that can weather any storm.
That's what I love about her approach. It's not about ignoring fear. It's about using it as fuel to make smarter choices and build that resilience.
Leading to a more, intentional, joyful kind of life.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dig into next. How this whole afford anything mindset can help you create that kind of life no matter where you're starting from financially.
Perfect. Okay, so we've covered the why behind Paula's approach, aligning your money with what you truly value to create a life with more freedom, more choices. But how do we actually DO that? Thankfully, she doesn't just leave us hanging with these big concepts.
Right. She gets into specifics, and that's where her focus on real estate comes in. It's a big part of how she suggests building that passive income stream that fuels financial independence. Remember those leaves we talked about from the tree analogy? Real estate, that's one of her go-to tactics.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people, they hear real estate and they just shut down.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's too complicated, too scary.
Yeah, totally.
But Paula, she breaks it down so it actually feels doable.
Yeah, she does. She talks about starting small, maybe just 1 or 2 rental properties, and building your portfolio over time.
It's not about becoming a tycoon overnight.
No, not at all. And what I love is how she connects this back to that grow the gap idea.
Right.
Use that rental income to boost your savings rate. It's like a positive feedback loop. Your investments are working for you to get you to FI faster.
So you're not just waiting around to be rich before you even think about real estate.
Exactly. Even if you can only do a small down payment on like a modest property, that's still a huge step.
It's that whole start where you are, use what you've got kind of thing.
Exactly. And she's big on emphasizing that this isn't about being a real estate mogul right away. It's about that long game. Thinking strategically, do your research, understand the numbers before you jump in.
Be intentional.
Yes. And that brings us back to like the core of her philosophy. It's not about money for the sake of money. It's about using it as a tool to build the kind of life you want.
And she gives some great examples. I remember that story she told about choosing to live in a smaller house so she could travel more.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect example of like afford anything in action.
What are you willing to trade off? What are your priorities? It's not about deprivation. It's about deciding what matters most to you.
And for her, it's travel, experiences, being able to set her own work schedule. For you, it might be totally different. The key is figuring out what those anythings are for you and then having a plan that makes it happen.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Remember how we talked about the mental side of financial independence?
Yeah.
Paul is big on that too.
Oh, definitely. It's not all spreadsheets and numbers.
Right.
She talks about this idea of lifestyle inflation versus lifestyle design, and that one really got me thinking. Lifestyle inflation, that's that trap where as you make more money, you just automatically spend more.
You get a raise, bigger car, nicer house, fancier clothes. It never ends.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that hamster wheel, always chasing after more stuff.
Yeah.
But Paula says the real deal, the real satisfaction comes from lifestyle design.
Which is?
Being intentional about how you use both your money and your time.
Okay, I like that. So it's not just what you buy, it's how you live your whole life.
Exactly. It's about asking, what kind of life do I actually want to be living? And then making choices that fit that vision. Even if it means breaking away from what everyone else is doing, keeping up with the Joneses and all that.
I love how she talks about finding joy in simplicity. It's not about denying yourself things. It's about realizing happiness doesn't come from stuff. It comes from those experiences, relationships, and just feeling like you're living in line with what you value.
And that's where the tree comes back in.
Full circle.
Those roots, your values, the branches, your ways of living those values out. So let's say one of your core values is freedom. Well, maybe your strategy is to build that financial independence so you have more control over your time, your choices.
Makes sense.
Or if family is huge for you, maybe your strategy is to create a lifestyle where you can be more present with your loved ones. Even if that means, making some financial adjustments.
It's all about trade-offs, right?
Right. Consciously making those choices that add up to a truly fulfilling life. And that's what I think is so amazing about Paula's way of thinking about things. It's not about following a bunch of rules. It's about giving you the power to make your own financial plan that supports the life you want, the life that's right for you.
Unique to each person.
Exactly.
That's what I think is so cool about this whole afford anything idea. It's not about being super rich. It's about, having the power to create a life that actually reflects what matters to you.
Totally. And realizing that wealth, that means different things to different people.
Right.
For some, it's money, yeah. But for others, it could be time, or having those strong relationships. Or maybe it's about making a positive impact on the world.
And I love how Paula, she gets that. It's not just about the numbers. It's bigger than that. It's like understanding that money is a tool, right?
Yeah.
And like any tool, you can use it in good ways or bad ways.
Absolutely. She's all about getting people to really think about their why.
Their purpose.
Yeah, why are you even doing this? What's the goal? What are you hoping to achieve? Because when you know that, it helps you stay on track, especially when things get tough.
Because let's be real, it's not always going to be sunshine and roses on this journey.
Oh, definitely not. You're going to hit bumps in the road, have those moments where you're like, is this even worth it?
For sure.
And that's when having people around you who get it, who support you, that becomes so important. Paula talks about that a lot.
Yeah, having a community.
Yeah, people who understand your goals, who can cheer you on and keep you accountable.
And I think that's one of the best things about the whole FI community.
Yeah.
It's not like cutthroat competition, It's like, hey, we're all in this together, helping each other out.
I love that. And even if you don't have a huge group around you, even just having one or two people you can talk to bounce ideas off of, that can make such a difference.
It really can. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Paula Pant's Afford Anything, I want to leave you with a few key things to remember. First, you can afford anything, but not everything.
Choices.
It's about being intentional with those trade-offs and making sure you're focusing on what's truly important to you.
Number 2, think about that tree of yours.
I love that visual.
Those roots, your trunk, branches, leaves. How can you get your money working with your values to create the life you want? That freedom, that choice.
And don't get lost in the how-to before you even figure out your why. What are you actually trying to achieve with this whole financial independence thing? That's the fuel that'll keep you going.
It's the motivation.
Exactly. And lastly, remember, you're not in this alone. There are tons of resources, communities, people out there who get it, who can help you along the way.
So much support if you know where to look for it.
So take what we've talked about today, apply it to your own life, and start building that afford anything future you've always wanted.
It's out there. Until next time, keep diving deep.